Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my first ever knitting tutorial, which is for this simple knit doll sweater. I tried to make the sweater design and video as simple as possible so that any beginner knitter could make this sweater. It is created only using the knit stitch and it is made in 5 pieces, the front piece, the 2 back pieces, and the 2 sleeve pieces, and I will show you every step of the way to go from a ball of yarn to this sweater. So let's get straight into the video. The yarn that I'm using today is a red heart yarn. It is called Super Saver Ombre yarn. It is a size 4 weight yarn, and the color that I'm using in this video is called Scuba. You will also be needing 6mm knitting needles. I am using circular ones just because I have always preferred working with circular needles, but you can definitely use straight ones instead. It doesn't really matter. And then some other things you will be needing are a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, at least 4 stitch markers or something to hold pieces of knitting together, some Velcro for the back. I normally use buttons, but this time I decided to use Velcro, and a sewing machine to sew the Velcro on. So we are going to be starting on the front panel and doing a long tail cast on. So you're going to want to have around a 30-inch tail, maybe a little bit shorter, before you do your cast on, because if it's too short then you won't have enough yarn to do the full cast on. But once you have your 30 inches measured out, just do a quick slip knot. And then just place it on one of your knitting needles, and we'll get started with our long tail cast on. So I'm going to just show you quickly how to do it in case you don't know, but I'll also link a tutorial in the description because this isn't a full tutorial. But basically what you're going to do is, you can see we have these 2 ends coming out. The long end that's about 30 inches long and the one connected to the ball of yarn. So you're going to split them apart like a triangle kind of, and put your fingers under them and then pull your fingers over. Then there are 2 loops on your thumb, so you're going to go into the first one and then come around and go into the one on your finger and then pull tight. So hopefully that made sense. I know it was a little bit of a quick thing just to show you the main idea, but anyways, I am just going to do this 19 times all together, which will give you a total of 20 loops to do stitches into, because the slip knot counts as a stitch that you can work into. But yeah. And now I finished casting on all of my stitches, and here is what my needle looks like. So now what you're going to do is you're going to turn it around so that the other needle that you didn't cast onto is on your right side, and then you're going to start doing knit stitches. This isn't a tutorial on how to do the stitches, so if you don't know how, then I'll link a tutorial in the description again. But you're just going to do a knit stitch into each loop for the entire row. Okay, I'm back and I've finished my first row, and this is what it looks like. So as you can tell, now the needle that had no stitches on it before has all of the stitches and the other one is bare, but you're just going to turn it around so that the one with no stitches is on the right side. And then you're just going to start doing knit stitches into each loop again. And after this row, you're going to do just knit stitches into every loop for 30 more rows, which will give you a total of 32 rows where you're just doing knit stitches. So I'm going to do all of those rows, and then I'm going to come back here to show you how to cast off. Okay, I'm back and I've done 32 rows of the knit stitch, and this is what mine looks like. So now we're going to be casting off to just finish this off so it's just in one piece and off of the needle, so that we can get started working on the back pieces. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab your needle and do 2 knit stitches. And then you're going to go look at the needle where you just put those stitches and take the bottom one and flip it over the top one. So now you only have 1 loop on that needle. Now you're going to do another knit stitch and you'll have 2 loops on the needle again. So then you're just going to flip over the bottom one to give you 1 loop. And you're just going to continue doing this all the way down your row. and you'll start to see as you get farther down that it's kind of finishing off the piece so that it's not connected to your needles anymore. And yeah. So now I'm just pulling over my last loop and I'm now finished with the casting off. All I have to do is cut a tail and pull through the loop, and then here is your front piece and it is completely finished. So now we are going to start on the first smaller back piece. So you're going to want a tail that's about 15 inches long before you start your long tail cast on to make sure that you have enough yarn. But once you have that 15-inch long tail, you're going to make a slip knot at the end. And then you're just going to place your needle through the loop and cast on 9, which will give you a total of 10 loops that you can work into, since the slip knot counts as a stitch. And I already kind of showed you how to do this, but again, I will link a tutorial in the description so that you can get a more detailed look on how to do the long tail cast on if you don't already know how. Okay, and here I have my 10 stitches, so now I'm just going to start doing a knit stitch into each of the loops on my needle, which will transfer them to the other needle, and then I'm going to repeat this row 31 more times for a total of 32 rows where I'm just doing the knit stitch in every stitch along, and then I'll come back and we'll cast off, and then we'll start on the second back piece. Okay, so now I'm back and this is what mine looks like after doing the 32 rows of knit stitches, and it's pretty much the same as the other one, just a little bit thinner. But now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to cast off. So I showed you how to do this on the first piece, but I'll just show you again now. So you're going to do 1 knit stitch into the first 2 stitches, and then you'll just pull the first one over the second one on the needle where you just did those stitches, which will give you 1 loop, and then you'll do 1 knit stitch into the next stitch and pull over the loop, and you'll just keep doing this until you have 1 loop remaining. And now that I only have that 1 loop, I'm just going to cut a tail and then pull through the loop with my fingers, which will create a knot and finish off the first back piece. So now we're going to move on to making the second one. So for the long tail cast on the second back piece, you're going to want to have around a 22.5-inch long tail of yarn before you start, and then once you have that measured out, just make a slip knot and then put your needle through the loop. So now we're going to be doing the long tail cast on, and you're going to be casting on 14 for a total of 15 loops that you can work into, since the slip knot counts as a stitch. So now you're going to turn around so that the knitting needle with the stitches on it is on the left side, and then you're just going to start doing a 1 knit stitch into each of the loops, and you're going to do this for all of this row, all of the next row, and every row after that until you have 32 rows total. So I will meet you back here when I have my 32 rows of knit stitches to show you what we're going to be doing next. Okay, so now I'm back and this is what my second back piece looks like right now. So now I'm just going to be casting off with the same method that I used for the front piece and the other back piece. I just knit 2 stitches, pull the first one over the second one, knit another stitch and pull the bottom over the top, and just continue that all the way down the row until you have just 1 loop remaining. And now that I have only 1 loop left on my knitting needle, I'm just going to cut a tail and pull through the loop, which will finish off the second back piece. So now we are going to move on to making the 2 sleeves. Okay, so for the sleeves, you're going to want to have a tail that is about 25 inches long. And when you have a tail about that long, you're just going to make a slip knot. And then you'll just put your knitting needle through the loop, and then you're just going to use the long tail cast on and cast on 17 stitches, which will give you 18 loops to work into since the slip knot counts as a stitch. And now that I have all those stitches, I'm just going to start doing a knit stitch into each of the loops, and I'm going to do that for all of this row, all of the next row, and every row until I reach my 28th row. So I will come back here when I have 28 rows of knit stitches to show you what we're going to be doing next. Okay, so here I have my 28 rows of knit stitches, and what I'm going to be doing now is just casting off the same method as before. Knit 2 stitches, pull one over, knit another stitch, pull that one over, and just continue doing that until you have only one loop. And then when you have that one loop, you'll just cut a tail and pull through it, which will create a knot, and finish off your first sleeve. So then you're just going to repeat these exact same steps again for your second sleeve, and I will meet you back here when I have that second sleeve to show you what we're going to be doing next to weave in the ends and assemble our sweater. Okay, so I'm back. I have finished both of my sleeves, and right here I have all of my pieces. So I have the front piece, I have the first back piece, the second back piece, and the 2 sleeve pieces. So now we are going to be weaving in the ends. So I don't really know how to weave in the ends on knitted garments, but what I did was I found a way to do it just like how I weave in the ends on crocheted things that I make. And I'm just going to quickly show you how I do that. So now I'm just grabbing my tapestry needle and threading it with one of my loose ends on my front piece. And I'm going to just look for those little knit rows in between the bump rows. So as you can see, if you pull apart some of those bigger rows that you see more, you can see these little rows that look like they have braids in them, which are the knit stitches. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert into those like it's a row of single crochets or half double crochets. And I'm just going to go into a couple of the stitches and then pull all the way through with my yarn. And then I'm just going to turn it around and skip the last one that I went into and go into the rest of them and pull it through and then just cut a tail. And this is how I do it for crocheting. And so I just wanted to do something that would be kind of easy to do. So hopefully this was helpful to you. But anyways, I'm going to find that little row on each of the pieces, and I'm going to weave in every single tail so that we just have nice and neat ends before we start sewing everything together and making a sweater. Okay, so now we're going to get on to assembling and sewing together all of the pieces to create a sweater that your doll can wear. So I have my front piece here, and as you can see, this is where we cast off up here, and it looks like a little braid or like a crocheted chain or something like that. That's the right side. This is the wrong side. It just looks like a dip or something. So that's the right side, but we're going to be putting it down right side facing down so that you can see the wrong side. And then here I have my shorter back piece. That's the longer one, but this is the shorter one. And you can see that cast off once again on the right side. And so I'm going to be turning it to the wrong side and placing the wrong side up against the wrong side of the other one so that they're together. And then I'm going to be grabbing one of my sleeves like this. And as you can see, the cast off is at the top right now. So we're going to be putting the cast off facing outwards because it's slightly tighter. So it'll be going around her wrist. And that's the bad side. So that's facing down and it's going outwards. So we're going to be putting it right on the side of both of those. And now we're going to get started with the sewing. So I'm going to grab that sleeve piece, and on the non-cast off side, I'm going to count over 9 stitches. And then in the 9th one, I'm just going to place my stitch marker. And then I'm also going to place it right on the edge of the front piece like this, which will just connect them. And then I'm going to go into the 10th stitch, one over from the 9th stitch, and also connect it to the back piece like that. And now I'm just going to be finding where the edge of the sleeve lays and where it should connect to the side of the front, and then I'm just going to connect it with another stitch marker and do the same for the one with the back piece. Now I don't have a specific measurement for this part of the video, but it's just kind of wherever it fits, and you can test if you did it right by folding over the back piece over the front piece and folding the sleeve in half and seeing if it folds in half just like mine does. And if it doesn't, then you should change your measurements a little bit, but it doesn't have to be an exact measurement. So now that I know where everything needs to go, I just threaded my tapestry needle with some yarn, and I'm sewing everything together and taking out the stitch markers as I reach them. And so I'm first just going to connect the front piece with half of the sleeve, and then I'm going to move on to connecting the back piece with the other half of the sleeve, so everything is kind of connected like this. But yeah. Okay, so now I have finished sewing on that first sleeve, and this is what mine looks like. So now we're going to be moving on to sewing on the second sleeve and attaching it with the second back piece as well. So what you're going to want to do is grab your second back piece, which is the bigger one, and then you're just going to take the side with the right side of the cast off, that's the wrong side, and you're going to place it right side facing down so that the wrong side is facing up, just like everything else. And you're just going to place it so the side of the back piece lines up with the side of the front piece, which means that it will overlap the other back piece a little bit. But anyways, now I'm just going to be grabbing my second back piece, and that's the wrong side of the cast off. This is the right side. So I'm going to be placing it right side facing downwards and the side where you cast off facing outwards, so that the side where you cast on is near the back piece and the front piece. So then you're just going to do the same thing as before, count over 9 stitches, and place the stitch marker in the 9th stitch and connect it to the front piece. And then on the next stitch over the 10th stitch, you'll connect it to the back piece with the stitch marker. And then you'll just see where it needs to go to connect with the back and the front piece on the other ends, and you'll just connect it and make sure that it fits. And once you have it where you want it, you're just going to sew it down using the mattress stitch and connecting all of these pieces together, just like we did on the other side. So now that I finished sewing on both of the sleeves, this is what mine looks like. So it's just a bunch of rectangles connected right now, but now we're going to be folding it over to make it into a sweater. So you're going to fold it over so that the wrong sides are facing outwards, because you don't want to see where we actually sewed on the outside, so we do it on the wrong side and then flip it outwards. But anyways, then I'm just going to thread my tapestry needle once again and sew everything together. So you're going to be sewing up the sides, connecting those two pieces, and then down the sleeves, which will connect the sleeve to itself and just make it into something that your doll can wear. And you're going to be using the mattress stitch once again. And now that I have finished sewing those things together, this is what mine looks like. So now it's more of like a sweater shape. The sleeves are closed, the sides are closed. But now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to count over 3 stitches on the front piece and 3 stitches on the back piece and connect them together just with a stitch marker on both sides, because right now the top is a little bit wide, too wide for the doll to wear like this, so I'm just going to be closing that up a little bit. But anyways, once you have those little pieces clipped, you're just going to be sewing along the piece from the sleeve to the 3rd stitch over where you clipped, and you're just going to be sewing it together to tighten up the shoulder pieces a little bit and make the neck area smaller. So now I finished that, and this is what my sweater is looking like. So as you can see, we have a lot of stray ends everywhere on the inside from all of these things that we've been sewing together. So you're just going to weave in those ends the exact same way that I showed you how to before. And actually, I'm kind of lazy, and most of them I just cut short because they're like on the inside, so you wouldn't see them. I do recommend that you weave them in, but if you are going to cut them short, make sure that your knots are tied tightly first, because I had a problem with that later on when there was a knot that wasn't tied very tightly, and then the thread came out and I had to like fix it up, but the thread was really short, so it was hard. Anyways, just make sure that everything is secured if you're going to cut things off. Okay, so I'm back now with all of my ends gone, and I'm just going to be turning it to be right sides out. So it was inside out that whole time after we sewed it, and so I'm just going to be turning it right sides out so that we can attach the Velcro, which is the last thing we have to do before the sweater is finished. So now I'm just going to be grabbing some Velcro and cutting it to be a little bit shorter than the length of the back of the sweater. And then I'm going to take one of the sides of the Velcro and put it on the outside of the shorter back piece, like this, and then I'm just going to sew around it. And careful when you're sewing on the knit things, it kind of gets hard and gets bunched up in the machine, but just kind of be careful with it and everything will be fine. Okay, so now I have that first piece of Velcro sewn onto the sweater, and I've put the sweater on my doll so that I can see where the second piece needs to go. So I'm just kind of folding it over, seeing where the piece of Velcro would need to go. And then when I figure it out, I'm just going to pin it down to make sure that it doesn't move. And then I'll just sew it down with the sewing machine. Once you are done sewing on that second piece of Velcro, you are completely finished with your beginner's knit sweater for American Girl dolls. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you liked it, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Also, make sure to ask any questions that you have in the comment section down below, because I will be happy to answer them and help you with your sweater. And make sure to check out my Etsy, which is called Willow Dolls Designs. I have 5 items up at the moment, and I will link it down in the description in case you want to go see it. Anyways, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Bye!